Good morning. Is everyone present and correct, comfortable? Delighted to welcome you to the Rethinking Places Pavilion for the first session of UKREiiF 2024. Really pleased to see so many of you here so early in the day, and let's hope that we don't need our Wellingtons for the rest of the conference. So my name's Sarah Wardle, I'm a director at Cavendish, so we deal with planning communications, government relations and corporate communications, and we're sort of the host for the room this morning. But we are really delighted to obviously welcome you to this panel, and we'll be discussing obviously the great opportunity that comes with Central South, and that leads me very neatly on to segue into our partners for this morning's panel, which is Central South. So without further ado, I'll hand over and we'll get going, and I hope you all have got a lot of questions ready to put our panellists on the spot. So thank you very much.
Right, morning everyone. First session, day one, UKREiiF. It's very exciting. Right, so today we're here to talk about the Central South and all the opportunities that brings with it. So I'm going to ask my lovely assistant there to forward on. My name is Meg Carter. I'm your host for this morning. I'll also be chairing the panel. We have a great panel here for you today that really reflects the opportunities within the area. Thank you, Shirley. Next slide, please. Chris Whittier. We'd like to thank all of our partners who have joined us today and a lot of our local authorities that are in the audience. I'm really hoping you get a lot out today, and we are always welcoming partners to Business South. So please do get in touch with our beacons of orange in the back there, who and one in the front, who are able to talk to you about becoming a partner of Business South and all the opportunities that brings. My panel, as I say, really does reflect the opportunities within the region. We have 3 coastal towns, 2 national parks. We have historic England's first capital. We are definitely the place to be. Health, well-being at the heart of everything we do. Connectivity to London, connectivity to the rest of the UK. The Central South really is here, and we are open for business. And to be able to talk to you all today about the opportunities that our region presents is a really great honour. The panel really does reflect all of those fantastic opportunities, and as you can tell, we've got a real mix, both public and private partnerships working together, hopefully for you today. Slido. We all love a Slido, so please do get your questions going. I also, very excitingly, have a £20 Aldi voucher for the best question. So please do make sure your questions come in thick and fast. They will be moderated though, I'm warning you now. Next slide please, Shirley. So we are going to start with a bit of a video, because all great presentations start with a bit of a video. So we're going to talk to you after this video. Please do enjoy it, and then we will welcome the panel to the stage.
Welcome to the Central South. As England's 4th city region, we contribute over 119 billion to the UK economy. We are a global gateway. A gateway to incredible natural heritage and waterfront cities, outstanding coast and country, including 2 national parks, and one of the best climates in the UK. Our prime location offers global connectivity to London and major airports, as well as Europe and the world across land, air and sea. We power a global marine and maritime economy, with a prime coastal setting perfectly placed to host internationally recognised events such as Cows Week and the Southampton Boat Show. At Farnborough International, our reputation as a global hub for aerospace and defence technology has drawn in international companies, including BAE Systems, Boeing and Airbus, a gateway to skills and innovation. We drive new technologies in renewable offshore wind and tidal technology, composite manufacturing and marine autonomous systems. Our thriving R&D community provides access to 5 research universities with world-class facilities, in addition to the state-of-the-art National Oceanography Centre. Join a workforce over 1 million strong, a student community of over 79,000 and over 1 million annual tourists. Make the Central South your next destination to work, invest, play. The Central South, a global gateway.
Okay, there will be a pop quiz later, so I hope you took all those facts to heart. Right, I'm going to welcome my panel. So can I please welcome Councillor Lorna Fielker, leader of Southampton City Council. Come on, a round of applause, please, folks. Come on. Vikki Slade, leader of BCP. Conrad Ford from Alica Bank. Sophie Camburn from Arup. And Joanna Rees from Blake Morgan. All ready? Ready to go? Right. Please do remember Slido, £20 Aldi voucher. Okay. Let's start with why the South. Conrad, you've got a microphone first, so let's go with you. Let's create some passion in the room around Central South.
Hi everyone. Let me tell my personal story on this one. So I moved out of London about 10 years ago, and I moved down to Winchester. The story behind that, but I'm very data-driven, and I downloaded the Sunday Times Best Places to Live, and at the top was Winchester. So I thought I'll go and visit Winchester, and I loved it. So I moved there 10 years ago, and I've been on a bit of a personal journey of kind of learning about the area I live in. So I moved down for a city, but I turned out to love the region, and I spent a lot more time in the region than I do the city. And what I hadn't appreciated until I moved down there is that there is a distinct identity for what we call South Central. I thought I was moving into a kind of commuter city, commuters for London. But actually, here's an interesting fact. The M3 motorway goes down to 2 lanes north of Winchester. There is a very distinct cultural identity for what we call Central South, which the video brings to life. So I've kind of fallen in love with the area and actually began to get really excited about its economic potential. You're probably thinking he would say that, wouldn't he? Well, I've chosen to really, put my money where my mouth is, because hopefully I'll be getting to wear one of these lovely orange vests at some point, because I've decided to
It's on order.
It's on order, brilliant. I've decided to actually get heavily involved in Business South, which is the representative organisation. So why is it that I'm excited about the area from an economic perspective? Well, there's kind of been a well-known fact for some time, which is that in many disciplines, knowledge worker disciplines like sales, software engineering, the most capable people are 5 times more productive than the average. It sounds really hard to believe, but it's true. So the most capable software developer will be 5 times more productive than the average. Instagram got to 1 billion users with about 20 people in the entire business. Okay, so if you don't believe the stat, there it is. I think in the next phase, when generative AI really begins to drive the productivity of knowledge workers, I will happily wager anyone in this room that it's going to be 10 to 1, at least. And why does that matter? I think it really matters. If you want to attract the very best talent, not just in the country, but in the world, you need to have livable places. And South Central is one of the most livable places in the country. And I'd personally argue the world, other than in January and February, when frankly this country is not the most livable place, is it? But fundamentally, I think it's an amazingly livable place. And as we saw on the video, it's churning out tons of talent. Before I joined Dalaka Bank, I spent a happy few months actually advising Starling Bank, which is another digital bank, very, very successful digital bank. And they'd chosen their first office outside London. They'd chosen Southampton. And I spent a lot of time with Anne Bowden, the founder of Starling Bank, and she actually spent a lot of time in Southampton. She bought herself a flat, by the way, down there. She loved it down there. And she's got lots of money, by the way. She could live anywhere. And they'd chosen Southampton because they knew there were tons of high-quality graduates coming out of the local universities who were being forced to move into London, but they wanted to stay in the area. That's the reason South Central is a really powerful place and has huge economic potential.
I was just telling the lovely ladies that I forgot my phone, so I can't look at Slido. So apologies, Conrad. That was great. I do apologise, Shell. Thank you very much for the slide. Don't forget, £20. Right, if you could pass the mic along to Vikki, that'd be great. Vikki, why the South?
So I think you're right about the personal story. So I'm the leader of BCP Council. I have a son who is studying at Chichester University. I have a daughter who's just graduated from Southampton University. I have a future son-in-law who's studying at Bournemouth University. And I spent the beginnings of my married life on the Isle of Wight marrying a sailor from Portsmouth. And the second choice was Winchester for the university. So I think we've covered every place there. There is no better place to be than the Central South. You know, I chose to live here in my adulthood. I came down to the Isle of Wight for a day trip and I never left. It is such a connected place. If you need to be in London, you can be in London. If you want to be in the West Country, you can be in the West. If you want to go to Europe, you can be there in a couple of hours too. And it is a place where people will look you in the eye. You know, it's not like going to London where where everyone just scuttles around. You know, it is a place that people want to be. It is a human scale place, and you're absolutely right, Conrad. It is a place of real creativity. You know, I think because we are that little bit further out than sort of the Surreys and the home counties, we do tend to look to each other for our entertainment, for our people, and you're seeing really incredible creative businesses growing up in robotics, in createch, in fintech, in the maritime industries. We really are making the most of our natural assets, you know, the blue and the green. So, you know, I absolutely think I would not want to live anywhere else. My brother went to live in Canada, and when my mum went to see him, she said, please don't go visit, you'll never come back. I said, but I live in Poole. Why would I want to go live anywhere else? So, you know, after I lived there, my mum moved down, my dad moved down. You know, it is the sort of place that once you come as a student or as a visitor, you want to come back. And I think our goal is to make sure that people come and stay rather than come back when they retire, because one of the biggest issues that we have at the moment is brain drain, and then having that aging population. And what we want to do is boost that sort of older student, sort of the postgrad student, young families to stay here and make their whole lives in the Central South.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vikki. Lorna, do you want? Oh, you can pass along. Why the South? Same question.
So, through Southampton, the South is a global region because we are a global city and we're the gateway from the world in, and then that stretches out wider into the south. I think it's a really exciting place to be. People want to come and work in the maritime sector. They want to come and live around this region. Personally, in terms of destination, they want to visit and stay. I only go on mini breaks in Hampshire. I keep my money local at all times. Thank you very much, Winchester and Portsmouth, who I visited recently. I think we have opportunities that other places don't have because we have that access to really good urban areas and then very close to the countryside as well. So you get to have the best of both worlds in a pretty concentrated space. It makes it attractive to invest in because people will want to come and live in this region and work in this region. You can get access to good staff, good employees. So why not the South?
Very good. Like what you did there. Sophie, what about you?
Thank you. Well, Arup's been in the Central South area for over 50 years now with an office in Winchester, and later this year we're moving to Southampton, and we're recognising all the things that you've been describing, the talent that's in the cities, the opportunities for us to bring young people and apprentices into our businesses, keep them in the Central South area. We're seeing the points you're making about it's a vibrant cultural landscape for young people, but it's also good for families, and we're seeing that transition in our own population and membership. So it's very key to us. It also links to lots of the things we're interested in as a company around coastal resilience and climate adaptation. We're doing lots of work with the universities on the decarbonisation of their estates, and we'd like to do more of that work with some of the partners here. And we're also looking at some of the transport connectivity issues. Very good connectivity, as we say, with out and in out of the region, but we can do more within the region as well.
Brilliant. And Joanna, obviously you're going to be buying a house down here now after hearing all of that. That's
done,
it.
Honestly,
We're done.
I'm on the phone, definitely, on the internet.
But you guys have supported Business South for a long time. What's your views on the region? Actually, it's quite nice that you're outside of the region.
Yeah, I am actually outside of the region, but two of my partners here today, Simon Lewis, Ollie Soughton, are very well known in the region. For us, it's very important as a local employer to be able to recruit and keep the best people coming out of the universities. And that's a combination of things, isn't it? It's a combination of lifestyle, it's a combination of attitude, and it's a combination of opportunity. So for us, that's very important, all those things you're saying. We've heard enormously about the attractions of the area, about the national parks and obviously the sea, but also there's a balance, isn't there? And that the existing attractions are there, but clearly there's a lot of opportunity for sort of placemaking and improving the semi-urban environment and looking at development, which I know we're going to come on to, Megan.
Beautifully segued. We absolutely are. And obviously, as we are in the Rethinking Places Pavilion, it seems only fitting that we now talk about the place. So all of you have talked really passionately about sort of the place that Central South finds itself in the great places that we have. We've got our sister city as well, Portsmouth, along that coastal stretch too. We've got lovely places like Winchester. Now, when we talk about regeneration and bringing these places to life and looking at regeneration and investment opportunities, Joanna, I'm actually going to come back to you. You know, getting these projects out the ground, viable at pace. Let's talk about that, and then we'll pick up on some of the individual projects that we've got around the table.
Okay, so I'm very mindful of all our public local authority clients and who are sitting in the room at the minute. I'm a construction lawyer, and we spend a lot of our time advising the local authorities and the public sector and developers and funders. So I think we've got kind of a bit of a poacher gamekeeper approach to it. We understand the risks. We understand how hard it is for local authorities to commit to projects, to commit to cabinet, to people's, you know, this might be the biggest project they've ever done. We understand that. We also understand that you developers in the room are going, we need to make some money because we can't actually get this project going if we don't. And your pension fund advisors are going, yeah, I need to keep everybody happy. So we really get this, okay? I do understand how it works. And what I would say is that risk needs to sit in the best place that can be managed. It's really important that when you're starting off on a project at the outset, you're thinking about who's the best party to manage this risk, and then introduce that, put the contractual position in place, and make sure that everyone sticks to it, and don't let anybody make any changes to the project. That's sort of a bit of a mantra for me. Megan?
Yeah. So in terms of that scene setting, if we can just pass the mic down to Vikki and Lorna. This is a really challenging environment, isn't it, for local government at the moment? But it's not something we can shy away from. It is what it is. So how do you find that circumstance of being able to bring out regeneration? You know, what do you need from your partners in order to deliver that?
So I think one of the biggest problems that councils have got at the moment, I mean, Southampton and BCP are in similar situations where our finances have been very publicly commented on. If you're based in the south, you'll know the problems that we've all got. And you know, local authorities are, you know, at a cliff edge right now. You know, they have been absolutely stripped of funding for over a decade, and they are on their knees. You know, we are still able to get funding and finance, but we need to have partners that want to invest in our places for the long term and understand what our places are about. You know, I mean, Southampton has got this incredible gateway to the world. Portsmouth has got this huge sort of vision of, you know, of where it needs to be. And then places like BCP have got that sort of human scale development. You know, it isn't a big shiny city. It is 3 wonderful, unique towns. And we want to bring back that sort of holistic regeneration. So what we're looking for is partners who want to be part of that journey and who want to be able to say, I used to come here as a child and I want to bring my grandchildren and see this incredible place that has morphed into a 21st century, you know, place that we all love. And I think, you know, there is huge opportunity, but it is seeing past that very short-term viability gap and going, actually, if you can invest for the long term, that stewardship model, you know, and be part of that place, I think that's really what we're hoping to find.
Brilliant. And Lorna, obviously, you know, it is in the headlines, but you've got to see through that, haven't you? You know, Southampton's well and truly open for business, as is Portsmouth, as is BCP. How are you finding it in a local authority at the moment?
So it is true, local government finance has changed, and it has changed fundamentally forever. And what we need to do is absolutely see that as an opportunity to work differently. City councils, regional councils, we are not the place. We're just the council. We are conveners to help shape that place. We should be bringing together all the major partners within cities, major landowners, to ensure we have a shared vision that we work on together, and then we get to properly shape place in a way that sticks and people buy into. And I think that's what we're doing now. In Southampton, we have our Renaissance board model, which is incredibly strong. For the first time, lots of people are working to a shared vision, where normally they wouldn't share stuff at such an early stage, but we've built up trust between people to share their plans for their long-term visions. And what happens is there's no duplication then. Everybody's helping each other on a shared goal, which is Southampton, but then that does become region as well. We've got a master planning process that's going on, which everybody's bought into. Thank you, Prior and Partners, for helping us with that work. So I see this as a time of fear in some ways, but tremendous opportunity. We will change how we work as a council, but I hope that means it will become easier to work with, because local authorities can be like treacle sometimes. So let's see if we can use this opportunity of changing funding to work differently, to look at things differently, and work more successfully with others across the region. Stop looking internally, which local authorities love to do, and look more externally.
We'll forgive you. So a wise lady sitting in the second row here once told me that regeneration isn't about just demolishing things, it's about breathing life into the existing. And Sophie, we've got a lot of opportunities here, actually very different opportunities, and Portsmouth again is a different opportunity. Placemaking, proper placemaking with good partnerships. What's your view on that?
Well, I think it's really critical that placemaking is at the forefront, and that kind of vision and setting the aspiration and enhancing the unique attributes of each place. And we've been very lucky over the last few years. We were working with Winchester originally on their central Winchester regeneration, setting the framework for that, getting with JLL through a procurement process. There's now developers in play. They're bringing forward that scheme. That's very, heritage-led. It's got lots of archaeological constraints. It's in a very historic setting. With BCP, we're working through our role on the Towns Fund to look at Boscombe, which is a completely different context, and helping shape the business case there to really inform a place that speaks to those residents, those businesses, that place. So you really need to understand the place, and some of what Lorna and Vikki have been saying is about how well do you understand place, and also how bold can you be in setting the bar to move forward, because there's no point just tittering around the edges and hoping it will get a bit better. You've got to have real conviction, and things like the Renaissance Board in Southampton help build that consensus and stakeholder engagement.
Conrad, obviously this is a region that you're now, invested in and really taking a lead role in. What are your views on the regeneration opportunities coming forward?
I mean, it's not really a comment on my region specifically, but my call to local government generally would be have more courage. Yeah. So Winchester, where I live, is a good example. We've had a sounds ridiculous in Winchester. It doesn't need a regeneration, but there's a really underutilised area of Winchester. We were discussing it earlier. There's a horrible bus station, for example. There's a huge amount of potential now. There was a consultation going on when I moved down. This is almost 10 years ago. And right now, we're beginning to see some actual real traction. Buildings getting knocked down. But I think there really is a silent majority in areas in regeneration. Most of us, people like me, we're extremely busy, right? We're working extremely hard to keep a roof over our house. We have, our families. I think there is a loud minority which will always pick apart every proposal that comes about. The reality is, don't underestimate the extent to which most of us. I mean, I actually had a look at these plans online when the email came out from the council, and I was like, yeah, it looks all right. And I'm sure if I had the time, I would unpick it bit by bit. Well, I don't like that. But the reality is, the general themes seem to make sense to me. It's a mixture of arts and crafts, residential, new commercial. It seemed to be that's a lovely use of what's frankly a horrible bit of the city at the moment. So have courage. Don't necessarily allow yourself to be cowed by a small number of very vocal people. What you'll probably find is that as long as you've got a sensible set of proposals, then most people will be happy to move it forward. I think there's lots of things that could move forward quicker if there was a bit more courage. That's not aimed at my region, that's a general comment.
Yeah, I think as well there's an element of the private sector understanding the challenges that authorities are facing as well, isn't there? You want to partner with a local authority, you are part of their legacy. This is something that's so much. So I think the private sector can provide some of that courage and security, can't they, through building really proper partnerships built on the right sort of behaviours. So I think that's a really interesting point. Joanna, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add on the placemaking perspective. I think I would echo exactly what Sophie has said, but I think it's also about movement. It's about working in transport from the early days. It's about thinking about public realm. It's about a mix of uses. It's that combination of business and children playing. It's schooling. It's a whole thing. And it's working with a sense of the identity of that community as to what it is, and then developing it. And there's so much of that in the south, actually, in business, south area. I think there's an enormous amount of potential. Conversely, we can all think of a site which is stuck on the edge of a town somewhere where all the houses are the same, everybody moves in exactly the same, and actually doesn't contribute at all to that locality, and it develops no sense of identity. So it's placemaking for me is really paramount for a successful development.
Okay. We've had loads of questions in, so I'm going to start now. Now I've got a phone that works. I'm going to start actually going through them. Right, okay, so let's talk about talent and the opportunities of keeping our talent in the region and the talent that we're looking at. So we've got a question here. Capturing young and old talent is so important. Which sectors can we promote more to help build a base to encourage all generations to stay? So, Vikki, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky in that we have 3 universities in Bournemouth. Most people don't realise, they assume we have 1. We have 3, and our college is just about to get university college status as well. So they are absolutely committed to retraining and reskilling people throughout their working life. And they've got a strategy coming up at the moment where they're looking at how do we help people in their 30s, 40s, 50s to rethink their careers. But for us in our part of the world, obviously we've got some incredible high-tech manufacturing. We have Sunseeker, we have the RNLI, we have a lot of aviation. So although you've got other places like Portsmouth and Winchester, we're actually really well suited to work across the cities and across the places for the supply chains of both the naval and the aerospace technology. The other thing which I think people don't realise that the Central South has got, particularly Southampton and Bournemouth, is a massive amount of financial services and growing now a fintech model. So, an awful lot of really innovative people coming out of our universities and wanting to find a reason to stay. The other area that I think BCP is trying to carve out for itself, because we are a much smaller place, is around the creative world. So having our own arts university, we've got quite a number of really special Oscar-winning Gravity, the people from the Arts University made Gravity, they made Avatar, so it's some absolutely amazing people, and using that technology, that virtual reality, that AI, and seeing what can you use that for in other industries. So rather than just thinking, I'm coming out of an arts university with a sort of virtual reality degree, it's actually, well, what are you going to use that for? Are you going to use it in defence? Are you going to use it in climate change? How can we actually cross-pollinate those different industries? And for us, the biggest issue is the house price problem. The affordability in BCP is the thing that's driving people out. And that's where we need to have those really interesting long-term conversations about how do you make your money from a site in that longer term? How do you invest for generations so that you are part of that sort of, as that viability gap closes and you then get that growth, rather than come in, make a quick buck, disappear off, and actually you don't get the long-term benefit of how that place grows up. So using that technology to make that happen.
Sophie, I'm just going to come to you, then I'm going to come to Lorna around this topic. Initiatives to keep people in the region is surely a key part of this puzzle. What's your view on that?
It is. I mean, I think we are vested heavily now in apprenticeship schemes for keeping young people coming out of university into our organisation, and using their networks more than ours, I think, to make that visible. So I'm very proud that we've got people in our region that are our Young Apprentice of the Year, for example, for the MCA and so forth. And that starts to create a pride in the location as well. So it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So and at the same time, as an organisation that's owned by its employees in trust, we have a lot of members that have been around for a very long time. And actually what's really great coming out of COVID is the importance of place, to be able to come together and to be able to share knowledge and create those kind of really important learning moments within the industry. And we're working hugely in collaboration. I think that's the other thing. I think post-COVID we've come out to address some of these really challenging public sector issues as a collaborative group of organisations rather than as individuals. So we're seeing a lot of cross-fertilisation between organisations as well. Creates an amazing buzz which people want to be part of.
Lorna?
Yeah, so it's not just a good job that encourages people to come and live in an area, because life is so much more than just going to work, and you want to have a really fulfilling career, but you also want to have a good life. So it's the other stuff that's in that place that you're coming to. So what is the cultural offer of whatever place it is, be it Southampton, be it Winchester, be it Bournemouth or Poole? Are there good cultural offers? Is there good museums? Are there lots of festivals that take place? Is there something for people to do that they're really attracted to in their spare time? And I think that's a really important part of the offer of Place, particularly if we want to attract more people in. But I think the other thing about it's not just about keeping people in cities or getting people into our cities for jobs. It's about also looking at the existing people who are there. So what we know is in Southampton, we have a gap of £37 per week on average of salary between people who live in the city and work in the city and those who commute in. So I want to make sure that we're not just encouraging the brightest in, but we're also ensuring that the people who already live in Southampton are equipped for those good jobs that we've got now and that are coming for the future, because we all need to prosper and we need to keep that money in Southampton so that it's inclusive, so that people can get on in their lives. So there's a double-sided bit of the coin there, more people to come in, but actually let's skill up our local population, because that means that people who are bringing their jobs to the city, they'll be able to get people working there who don't need to have a higher wage because the commute is less. And that's really, really helpful.
Very important questions coming for you, Lorna. Will Saints beat Leeds on Sunday? It was inevitable that this was going to happen.
Of course Saints will be beating Leeds on Sunday. I don't care that the entirety of this exhibition today and yesterday is telling me differently. We will win. We will march on. Thank you very much.
I love
Come on,
that.
you Reds.
Yes. So just picking up on that piece as well around Southampton, obviously you've talked about the Renaissance Board and and we've got a lot of questions coming in around unlocking opportunities, planning, actually delivering housing. What's your game plan here to be able to really deliver housing?
So housing's really interesting. If you'd spoken to me 6 months ago, I would only talked about the need for affordable housing, because housing is my professional background and I'm only interested in making sure that people can afford somewhere to live. But actually what I've really learned to understand is that part of that housing mix is aspirational housing as well, because what we need to do is ensure what I talked about a moment ago, people will live in the city, will spend their money in the city, but I need to raise the council tax base as well, because we are average Band A and Band B, which means we don't have a lot of money sloshing around to do other things beyond our statutory duties. So that's really important. Now, what we know is we need to get private housing developers to build that aspirational housing within Southampton. That's really important, and we need to encourage that and help them unlock sites to do that. And from an affordable housing perspective, know that we can't do it ourselves, because actually we failed to do it ourselves, and we need to be working with a broad range of other people to help us do that, be that registered housing providers or other people, other really interesting developers who are delivering in that sector at the moment. So we need to work with lots of people, because we need to deliver lots of housing in pretty short space of time. Southampton is growing massively and we already have a housing problem, but we need to make sure we're focusing on it at all price points. It's not just affordable, it's not just aspirational, it's your mid-range housing, and it's also that sector that's developing, which the jury's out on a little bit. It's like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like student housing on speed is what I'd call it. Yeah. So it's not a HMO, it's better than a HMO, but it's that stopgap. And maybe there is a place for that as well to help people move through, so we haven't got a silted up housing market. But we need to do something pretty rapidly.
Yeah. Joanna, obviously that's a challenge, isn't it, for a lot of people, but particularly for the South, that unlocking housing, planning, reality of getting it out the ground.
Absolutely. I think Sophie's probably a better place to talk about the planning challenges, but from getting it out of the ground, totally. And I think you mentioned, Lorna, about, the challenges for developers and sites. I mean, for example, if you're going to build housing on a brownfield site, brings its own issues with remediation, as you can imagine, and the costing of that and the unknowns. And I suppose what I'd say is get the contractor involved early, so that you can do early contractor involvement, you can do your site investigations, you know what it looks like, so that you're actually paying for the risk that exists. And this is a problem that I encounter quite a lot when working with local authorities, is there's such a nervousness about trying to get a fixed price so that internally everybody knows what they've got to deliver to. Sometimes the local authority ends up buying risk that it doesn't actually exist in the ground. So I think there needs to be a bit of a change about the way things are thought about, and there needs to be an acceptance within the local authority that, you get the contractor to pay the contractor early just to do the site investigation, so the price can be a bit more determined and a bit more fixed for actually what's there, and then an expectation that if something changes the price will go up, but actually you've only paid for what was actually there. And I think that would be a big change in the method that local authorities contract generally, and would really help speed getting projects going.
Sophie, I'm going to come to you. Is particularly picking up on that planning challenge, it has come up. Planning has entered the room. Did
Thank
want
you,
to
and
just-
I'd like to point out I am not a planner, but
Thank God.
before any of you quiz me. But I think what Lorna, what you were starting to allude to, there are some really interesting models out there now to accelerate housing delivery, and they take your point about risk and reward and start to create some really good joint venture or type or development agreements that allow both private and public sector to come together and not see each other as adversaries, but actually work in partnership and understand that there will be change, as you say, along the way, but actually there can be brilliant outcomes for both parties through that if there's a transparent and a well-structured relationship in there. So I'm hopeful. I think, you also, cities like Southampton have a huge existing stock that's owned by the local authority. We've got to get on the front foot around retrofit of existing properties to address both climate emergency and energy consumption, but also fuel poverty in some of the communities that really are suffering from that. So there's lots of opportunity for both retrofit and new build in the central south area.
And Sophie, while I've got you, we've had a few questions through around infrastructure, connectivity. I said at the start, this is a very well-connected region, but actually, is there more that needs to be done in terms of connectivity and transport infrastructure to be able to deliver that longer-term future ambitions around a lot of things we've picked up on, housing, talent, all of that good stuff?
Absolutely. So it's well connected as an intercity location in central south. Some of the intra-city connections are quite poor. A lot of the work we're doing in Europe at the moment around bus franchising is really interesting in this space because, of course, bus systems have the flexibility to adapt as places and regions adapt over time. The models are changing really rapidly at the moment. It's really exciting. Buses are a really exciting space to be in. I've never thought I'd say that in my entire career. And we're also, of course, doing a lot of work around active travel and in lots of city centres at the moment. So the whole notion of livable neighbourhoods and that ability to both work, live and play, study, learn within a relatively close proximity of being able to cycle and walk to lots of those places. So we're seeing quite a change in sort of from what I would say, linear infrastructure into a much more multimodal model, and of course the really exciting places are the interchange moments in those where you get to see lots of opportunity for development.
And Conrad, from your point of view, obviously that inward investment piece, this transport infrastructure connectivity is obviously a key part of that.
Yeah, I'd kind of back up what you're saying. In terms of between cities, we're extremely lucky. So Winchester, which for those that don't know, is a very small city. It's only really a city that's got a cathedral, but we happen to be on the intercity line, so I can get a direct train to Manchester, I can get direct trains to Birmingham, and indeed our airports. So Bournemouth has always been well connected. Southampton Airport recently got extended, so can take bigger planes now, which is exciting. And honestly, I prior to Alacabank, I've now been involved in 3 of the fastest growing companies in the UK, and indeed Alacabank is the fastest growing company in the UK. One of those companies was a business I founded, and we took investment from the Netherlands, so I had spent a lot of time in Amsterdam. And I could literally turn up at Southampton Airport less than an hour before the plane took off. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's almost like taking a bus. Yeah, we are extremely lucky in terms of that between cities, just because we are on the intercity lines and we have good airports. I mean, my perspective on inward investment is let me put it this way. Whatever I do next, I'm going to do in South Central because I want to do it where I live. And there is a ton of talent. Let me be really clear about this. I know tons of people in Winchester, and these are elite knowledge workers. They've come back from Singapore, they've come back from Dubai, Hong Kong, or they've been in the city, and we all dread getting on that damn train every morning into London. Not every morning. Post-COVID, we get to spend more time at home. Given the choice, we would spend all of our time. I don't know anybody in my network who looks forward to the train into London to go to work. I'm sure they exist. But you've got some, we talked about age groups, right? The kind of risk that we become a place where people leave when they're young and come back when they're old, right? Don't forget we have some world-class talent living in the area. They just happen to have to go into London to ply their trade. I'm one of them, right? What I do next, I will do down here. So hopefully I've got one more company left in me. But I will build it in South Central because I want to take advantage of that. I want to turn around to my friends and say, hey, you can work down here now. Yeah. So we must find a way of keeping the youngsters there. And housing, of course, as we've touched on, is really critical to that. And housing, by the way, is something where I kind of touched on what I said before about a silent majority. I was reading recently that one of the parties has done the electoral maths and figured out that supporting house building and going against the NIMBYs actually works. And I believe that, by the way, because there are a lot of people like me, right? I have a development site next to my house, right? I'm happy for them to build something reasonable. Get on with it, yeah? Because somehow we've got to solve the housing crisis. I don't want the fact that my kids will struggle to get on the housing ladder. And there has to be a price to pay. So again, I think there's a busy, silent majority, and we should have confidence and courage to go ahead and build stuff. Build it and they will come.
Great, Phil. Politics. Politics has entered the Slido sphere. So how do, we are in a period of change, but we kind of always are in local government, aren't we? It does feel like there's always sort of something going on or something changing and things like that. In terms of the market having that sort of stability to be able to work with local authorities and to sort of weather that storm. Vikki, Lorna, what's your views on that?
There is always change in politics. That is the nature of it. That's what elections do. I think in terms of for local authorities and longevity, that can always be a nervousness in the sector. Is there something going to happen? So in Southampton, we have elections all the time. And even though we have had stability for most of that period of time, when we didn't have, it created an awful lot of upheaval and things change. So it's how do local authorities, despite them being political entities, which we are, build in that stability to give confidence to the sector. And I do believe the Renaissance Board that we have in Southampton is part of that, because that has cross-party support. So everybody in Southampton is on that journey in terms of a very long-term vision for Southampton. So we're still political, but we're taking the politics out of the long-term vision, because it's not just about this year, it's not just about the next election cycle, it's about 5, 10, 15 and 50 years down the line. So we need to make sure we bake that in. And I think we now have a very good model that means if there is change, and I hope there will not be, but it won't derail all the plans that we've put in place that's going through master planning, because we must deliver that for Southampton.
And let's just pick up on your Renaissance Board really quickly for everyone in the room. This is, it's a cross-party group. You've got your university on there, you've got your big employers, and actually you're coming together to look at holistic regeneration.
That is exactly what we're doing. I couldn't say it better.
Perfect. Cheers, folks. Vikki?
So I think we need to, what I would ask is that people who are looking to invest in places, whether you're investing directly with a local authority partner on their land or just in a place, is understand that politicians can't ignore the politics, because if we aren't in a position where we're leading a council, we can't make things happen. And, that thing about the silent majority being very comfortable with development, yes, but there has to be a sell to the people who are already there. What my frustration, and I've been on both sides, worked with planning consultants and then as a councillor, in it's always about what's in it for the people who are going to move into the new places. And actually, what we want to hear and what our residents need to hear is what's in it for the people who already live there. And that's why I talk about that long term, because if we can make sure that there's something in it for people who already live in a town, then you will get that silent majority, and we can ignore those noisy people, because we will know that actually we're in it for the greater good. So it is work with us and acknowledge and accept that there is going to be some bashing going on, and we do have to stand up for the residents, because fundamentally those of us that are council leaders and councillors, we are our representatives of the community. We're not the professionals in the room. We are the community voice. And I think sometimes a developer might come in and doesn't recognise that. They think they know what's best, and they probably do, but they have to find a way of communicating that to the people who are already in the space.
Yeah, and I think it's taking a moment as the private sector or anyone working with local authorities to understand your organisations. I heard a councillor quote recently, it's £35,000 to put a child through care, potentially for a week. That's it. This is a very challenging environment, and they're very complex environment, aren't they?
Yeah.
The commercial, the political, but take the time to understand them.
It's really, I was talking to somebody last night and he heard for the first time what we say every day, which is, 70%, in some cases 80% of every penny that we spend goes on adult and children's social care. But the average resident only cares about whether their bins are collected. And that's a tiny, tiny bit of what we do. And so if you're asking us to make a multi-million-pound investment in a site, and for 3, 4, 5 years nothing happens on the surface, you know, the residents get really agitated. You know, I've got my brochures for my wonderful development site, which sat unused for 20 years in the private sector. We bought it within 9 months of coming into power. 3 years later, it looks like nothing's happened. And the residents are going, when's the first house being built? Well, it'll be years away yet, because all that stuff's happening under the ground. And that's the bit that I think we have to communicate better, and you know, developers need to understand that's our role.
Yeah. And Joanna, we've had a question around sort of pace of deliveries. We've had planning, politics and pace. What do you think is the barrier to that? Do you think it's the political, or actually is that a bit of a myth? There's obviously lots of other contesting, you know, factors as to why, but how do we unlock these opportunities at pace?
At pace, I'm not really sure I can speak on the political aspect, Megan. I can't believe you gave me that one. Thank you. At pace, I think it's about preparation. It's about engaging the consultants early to understand what the risks all look like. And to working together. And I think what's quite interesting about, we were talking about the Vikki, is about stakeholder engagement. I think the earlier you can get stakeholder engagement going from, obviously from a planning perspective, but also from a placemaking perspective, if people feel that this new development's actually going to add genuine value, social value to their communities, you're far less likely to get objections. And also working where we work with a lot of local authorities and with contractors about the contribution to social value, which I think is another way of winning over local communities. So people can see that on the basis of this new infrastructure project coming, that they're going to be training a number of apprentices in the local colleges, or making sure that people are engaged in schooling and giving opportunities to people in the local community. That whole element of social value is quite important. It's a good way of selling to the local community from the experiences that I've had.
So, Sophie, the system is what the system is, and we've got some, you know, really great sort of views on how we can start to look at better partnerships and things like that. But if we talk about the region again, of sort of this national global connectivity hub, you know, Conrad's picked up on the airport. We've got free ports. We've got such. Just let's talk about that a little bit. The opportunity of investment in the south, you know, in terms of that global connectivity.
Yes, well, you mentioned the Freeport there, which of course is a huge opportunity in terms of its tax benefits, both for occupiers but also for the region, in terms of being able to retain business rates and use that to start to develop some of the skills in the industries that we've been discussing this morning. You know, it's a fantastic global opportunity, and we're seeing lots of companies coming into the conversations around investing because of that scale, and there are great partnerships in that model as well. So I think it's really interesting. Then that links into hydrogen and both blue and green hydrogen opportunities, and starting to see how we can address some of the energy challenges that the Central South faces, because there's not enough power for some of the plans that are being proposed. So starting to build that really long-term vision for a sustainable green economy that's developed around some of global relationships using mechanisms like the Freeport.
Conrad, is there anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, just I hadn't even thought. I didn't even mention the ports when I was talking about connectivity. We are extraordinarily lucky, aren't we? And I think for me, the opportunity and challenge ahead is get better at communicating it. Right? You know, how do we move from communicating this to a room of 100 lovely people to a global stage of hundreds of millions of successful businesses around the world? We really need to tell that story, and that's what I've decided to get involved in over the coming years. I'm very excited about doing. But I do need my orange jacket, so I stand out.
Lorna, obviously Southampton, and Portsmouth with the cruise industry, and you guys with your, you really are a global gateway, aren't you? So how's that working for you?
It's really interesting. I've lived in Southampton I think it's interesting. You might think it's terribly boring. I've lived in Southampton for 10 years, and I've never thought of us as a global city until I went and sat in Alistair Welsh's office down in the port. And I live in the city, and I've been a city councillor, and I've been a cabinet member for all that period of time. So we have an awful massive opportunity there, which I don't think we all recognise and are using in the way that we should. And I think we're very fortunate to have such good partners in the port, because the port looks beyond its gates into the city and is ensuring that it's maximising what it has to benefit everybody in Southampton, and we need to make sure we're playing our part and doing that back. I think the main thing for me is what I see is when it comes to visitors, because we're a massive cruise port, is how do we get those people to stay in Southampton? Because that's the challenge that we have at the moment, is people are moving through Southampton. They're coming in, they're getting on a cruise ship, and off they're going, and they're coming back the other day. They're coming back the same way. We need them to stay in Southampton for 1 night, 2 nights, to take advantage of the really great stuff that we've got. We need them to, we've got a world-class art collection in Southampton. We need them to stay in our hotels and use it as a point to go off to visit the other areas of the region that are really interesting to go and visit. So that's something that is a whole region we're not really maximising in the way we should, that massive cruise industry that is only growing.
Absolutely.
So I think we can do a lot more there. There's a lot more opportunity, and that's how do we sell Southampton and the region as a destination, give it a clearer narrative so people really understand what's on offer.
They go and see Stonehenge, don't they?
They go and see
in London.
Stonehenge, yes.
Why not?
Yeah.
Lovely. So in terms of this green agenda as well, so Vikki, I'm going to come to you. The role of local authorities within that, the green industry is booming, the opportunity around it, are local authorities going to be the ones to be driving that, do you think?
So I think, most local authorities declared a climate and ecological emergency in 2019 or 2020. Most of us are trying to get our own houses in order by 2030, and quite a few of us are trying to lead the way in our areas. And I think although we don't have a massive carbon footprint of our own, we have influence into every home and every business in our location. So when it comes to finding solutions to climate-related issues, we're a brilliant partner to have on board, whether it be, you're a solar provider, or you're sort of trying to retrofit homes, or, deal with sort of transport infrastructure. We do have that connectivity with our people, and I think there is a massive role that local authorities need to play. We can leverage finance in a different way. We do have land. We do have people at our disposal. So I think in terms of that, absolutely. But then there is incredible work happening throughout our universities. You've only got to look at the innovation that's going on in them. And the relationships that we have with our universities to try and unlock that research potential. So absolutely. And, the 3 main sort of cities and don't tell anyone I suggested we might be a city, because we're not. But if you think of BCP and Southampton and Portsmouth as coastal cities, we are so reliant on the environment being, helping us out, because we're going to flood if not. Our places will be underwater. It is in our interest to get the climate issues right, and we are absolutely at the vanguard of that. So you will see an awful lot of really exciting work happening because it needs to for our own survival.
Yeah, and actually, we laugh, but the flooding is quite a big thing in the region. Portsmouth just spent £170 million on their flood fence, which look pucker, by the way, look great. But it is really a challenge when you're developing in these areas to take on, consideration of that climate risk. Joanna, Sophie, what are your views on this in terms of the climate change and obviously some of this stuff becoming, a requirement?
Absolutely. So we're seeing far more projects, standalone projects of wind, solar, green hydrogen, projects coming off the ground. We're definitely seeing that. Another thing we're seeing is sort of incremental changes being made to development projects and far more of a green agenda. I think we're starting at the beginning of a curve, I think it's going to be like social value, whereas like 20 years ago, nobody really knew what it was and nobody thought too much about it. There was a bit of lip service paid to it. I think now that we're seeing contractual changes coming in. We're seeing new amendments being made to contracts, standard contracts, the NEC type contracts, which is going to have a climate change requirements. The client's going to have a climate change plan. You contractors in the room are going to have your climate change response to that. It's going to be part of the scope. If you don't meet your climate change plan, it's going to be a defect. So I think generally, you're going to see quite a lot of change coming. And the minute that funders start making compliance with climate change requirements part of the funding, there will be a dramatic change. So we're now currently helping people upskill on that and start thinking about these things, because I do think it's coming in the next 5 to 10 years.
Sophie, any comments on that?
Well, I just think back to the placemaking comments that were made earlier. Infrastructure by itself will address some of the climate mitigation, but there's so much more it can do. So you mentioned South Sea. The South Sea coastal defence work that we designed has this amazing ability to become a place, and then you see lots of active health benefits coming out of that. So understanding where cities really have an infrastructure criticality, but there are lots of placemaking benefits that come from that, and getting, I think, again, consensus around the importance of that rather than just seeing it as a chore starts to create identity and build value and pride back into some of that destination brand opportunity that you were describing, Lorna.
So I'm going to start down the end there, Joanna, and I just want, if there was some sort of closing remarks that you would say to this audience of investors, developers and Central South, what would be your closing remarks to this audience?
I think isn't it join Business South, engage with the community and drive the region forward?
Brilliant.
And I've gone first, so I've had the easy one.
You all have to think of something different. Sophie.
I really liked some of the points about engagement that were being made. So, we have a Know Your City program in ARIT, but all organisations should be starting to get to know your city and know the places that you want to invest in that way and be part of that continued success. I really encourage you to, use forums like Business South, but other networks as well to start to become part of that narrative.
Yeah, my point would be, if you're an investor or potential investor, don't make the fatal mistake of thinking that the Southeast is one big amorphous blob. South Central is a distinct identity. It's not some minor hub of London. It is a distinct identity. I started out by pointing out that the M3 motorway goes down to 2 lanes north of Winchester. So our centre of gravity is south. Our centre of gravity is the coastal cities, the amazing coastal cities. And I spend all of my time, local football matches, etc., in that area. It has enormous potential. Don't make the mistake of thinking the Southeast is a big amorphous blob that happens to be, centred on London. The South Central has tremendous potential. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is on that one over time. Come and have a look and see the opportunity, because it's quite tremendous.
Vikki?
Yeah, I suppose I'm going to make a little bit of a pitch to say, everybody goes on holiday to Bournemouth or the New Forest. Why not live there? I do. And I wouldn't live anywhere else. I think that's the thing is, pre-COVID, everybody thought they had to gravitate to the big cities, the big smoke. But actually now we all understand that, where we live is where we love. We all started exploring those places. And, there's a couple of million of us who have the joy of living in these places 24/7. And I look forward to your next business where we can actually say to our graduates, don't go to London, see what Conrad's doing, because whatever it is, it'll be amazing. So why not come and join us? Because we have absolutely everything. And I say, from Poole to Chichester, so the east to the west of our region, my son does it for 15 quid in less than 2 hours. And you can see all these incredible places. So, yeah, come join us.
Lorna?
I get the pithy last words. We're open for business. We want people to come and invest within the whole region. All of us are developing different plans at different speeds and different paces. Please keep an eye out for them and come and talk to us and see how you can join us on that journey. Thank you.
I'm also going to add a little bit as well. It is just magic. There is something magical about this region. It's the people. It's, everyone here that's part of Central South and has been on this journey with Central South for a very, very long time. It did lead to bright orange body warmers, but there has been lots of other things. And it is just magic. It's ambitious. It's brilliant. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to my panel who represent all of that magic. So I can have a big round of applause, please. The fun doesn't stop here, folks. We do have our annual conference coming up, Business South Annual Conference. Investors go 3, so do bring your checkbooks. And we also have our Central South Property Lunch as well. So there's a whole host of events on the website. Everyone, as I say, my beacons of orange around the room, if you want to discuss becoming partners of Business South, please do. And we'll all be here for a few more minutes just to take any questions. But thank you all for joining us today. We've also got partners, although we're here today, we have actually got partners in and around the area. We've got Surrey, we've got Dorset, and we've also got Basingstoke and Dean. So do go and find those other local authorities that are here today and talk about this great region. In terms of the Aldi voucher, I think, we'll have to go with Saints, won't we, really? I think Tom Coles has got to get that. There we go, round of applause. I hope you're saying they win as well. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of day one at UKREiiF, and we'll see you all soon.